Hey guys, going to do this podcast episode a little bit different. Since I'm driving down to Georgia, I leased some property down there and near Brunswick, Georgia, hoping there's some pigs on it. I leased it sight unseen. So yeah, hoping to see some pig sign. Should be deer around, maybe turkeys. We'll see. Find out more in a couple hours when I get there. But what I wanted to talk about is different than that somewhat. I'm going to be doing a kind of switching gears this fall. I'm going to be doing more of the primitive hunting. Some of my good friends are in the Hunt Primitive Tribe with Ryan Gill. I'm one of the members. I film for them, and I've been on a bunch of hunts with Ryan. So I'm kind of transitioning to the more primitive bow setup. Self bow, cane arrows, stone points. Actually, this hunt I'm bringing all that except for the stone points because I've got a pig hunt, which I'll talk about here in a minute, in Florida in a couple weeks. So I'm going to save those broadheads, those stone points I should say, for that hunt. And this hunt I'm using cedar arrows and Magnus broadheads. So yeah, so I'm excited to kind of make that transition. I've got more time now. I'm kind of semi-retired, and my wife and I bought a house with woods around it. It's not a big property, but there's big section of woods behind me, so I'll have space to shoot more often, do some primitive skill stuff in the yard. Got a fire pit already, and just looking forward to making that transition. That doesn't mean I'm only going to hunt that way. I still going to do black powder and probably rifle a couple days a year, and we'll see how it goes with the primitive gear this fall. I'm excited for it. So the reality is it's really not a handicap at all. I mean, especially if you're switching from traditional laminated bows to a self bow, they shoot, pretty much the same. I mean, I aim mine the same way I shoot my recurves or my longbows. The self bow I aim the same way, I can't the same way, same anchor point, just different arrows really, lighter arrows. And just because of the nature of that material of cane and river cane in this case, or even cedar, they're lighter than my regular carbon arrows. I'm gonna pause it here. I'm gonna wreck. Got some pretty bad traffic here. Looks like just a 5-minute delay, so should be back up to speed soon. So as I said, making a transition to primitive, and I've got actually just cut down a pignut hickory a few days ago to make bow staves out of. I'm going to season it for, I was thinking about a week, which is not a lot of time at all, but I think I'm going to wait a month and then start working on it, and maybe look for some other staves in those woods, hickory, or there's some black cherry, there's oak, of course, but probably going to look for another hickory or two, and just to get those cut and start seasoning them. The weird drivers. Anyway, so today, so that's the what I'm looking forward to for this fall. For this hunt, this particular hunt, I leased some property near Brunswick, Georgia. As I said, heading there now. It's 140 acres, give or take, and have not been there. We're gonna just drive around a bit if I can. It should be pretty dry. They haven't had rain in a while, so although where I live near Raleigh, it's been, today was like a downpour. It's been raining a lot, so but where I'm headed, it shouldn't be too bad. I should be able to drive that property. I've got a Jeep 4-wheel drive, so that'll save some time because I don't have a lot of time. I got just this afternoon and then tomorrow till about noon, and then I gotta head back, which is fine because it's 90, I think it's like 92 degrees right now, so I don't want to be out running around too much in this heat anyway. But what I'm going to do is look for, of course, hog sign. I'm going to look for some really thick cover. A couple reasons for that. First of all, pigs like the thick cover. They like bedding in it. And also, there's some neighborhoods not far from the property. Whenever I've leased property, I've had issues with trespassers. So what I'm going to do is just put the feeder in a place that they just don't want to hunt. Somewhere nasty, thick, nasty, preferably wet, a little bit of, not super wet, not like waist deep wet, but ankle deep wet. just a place, even if they find it, they're not going to want to hunt there because they're probably going to want to poach deer with rifles. They're probably not as interested in the pigs, and they're certainly not going to be interested in, I would assume, poaching pigs off of my stand at a feeder, so just we'll see. That's just my theory. I think they're typically lazy people and going to hunt like long open areas where they can just shoot deer with a rifle and poach them that way, as opposed to working hard at it like we do. That's my hope. We'll see if that actually pans out that way, but that's where I'm going to approach it. And if they steal my stuff, whatever, if there's good hog sign, I just won't put a feeder up. I'll just put corn every time I come and then just hunt them out in the field when they're rooting, early in the morning or in the afternoon. So I'll find a way around it. And then the deer hunting, we'll see what kind of sign I see. I'm pretty excited for turkeys. There should be the county that it's in is pretty well known for good turkey hunting, and I'll know more in a couple hours. But I'm gonna pause this now for a second. Okay, guys, I'm back. Had some traffic there, and I've been listening to a traditional bow hunting wilderness podcast. Jason was on a rant, most of which, probably all of which I agreed with, but it just got me thinking, the trend the last 3 years has been to hunt public land, and he was kind of talking about that and how the barriers are down for people to, it's a lot easier to do it than it was when we started bow hunting in the 80s. Really 70s for me when I was a little kid hunting small game with a bow, late 70s. But yeah, there's other options. You don't have to hunt public land. I'm purchasing a small piece of property in the mountains in North Carolina. Should close on that next week. It's not a big property, big enough to hunt on, and there's private land around it. I'm looking into buying another piece or two, maybe not contiguous, but in the same area to it. So that's, buying land is an option. If you're willing to drive and get to remote places where the price of land is cheaper, or places that aren't going to be developed anytime soon, then I think it's a good investment. I mean, not even from a hunting perspective, but just like, passing this land on to my son someday, and he can sell it or keep it and hunt it or whatever, build a house on it. That'll be up to him, but I'll have it, and it's and the price, the value of it is certainly not going to go down. It's going to go up, more than likely. Real estate very rarely goes down, especially where this place is, where it's kind of starting to be a popular place with tourists, but also people just getting out of cities, moving to the country, and moving to the mountains in particular. So I've got that, and maybe a couple other spots near it that I'm going to purchase, and that's money that I've saved. Some of it I did have an inheritance from an aunt. She left me some money, and she knew I've been an outdoorsman my whole life. I'm sure she knew what I would do with that money, and then some of it I saved. Some of it was, like I said, was inherited, and it's going to go to good use. It's going to put meat in the freezer for us. There's some great trout fishing right near that property, camping, etc. Eventually, maybe put a cabin on it. But so that's one way. Buying land is not cost prohibitive if you're willing to save and like I said, look for out of the way places or more remote places that people. Because most people that buy a few acres are going to look to put a house on it. I'm not looking to do that. I'm looking to hunt it and not pressure it, of course, so the deer stay around, and manage it so that the deer want to be on my piece, and then hunt it in an intelligent way, like scout it, figure out the winds, the prevailing winds, don't hunt it on the wrong winds, and things like that. So there's some planning involved this fall for sure. Another way is to get on a lease. Like I'm on my way to this Georgia lease. That's 2 states away from me, but it's only 6 hours. It's almost all highway. Can be there, leave in the morning and be there midday and hunt the evening and stay for a few days or not. I certainly wouldn't want to drive back today, but I could if I wanted to. So get on a lease, and that one is not a big property. I leased it just myself and my son, and I've been on other leases where there's been 30 guys. That's just if you get on a lease with 30 guys, probably 10 of them hunt. The other ones will never get there. I mean, it's rare. The ones that I've been part of, the big properties that have a lot of people on them, looks like, oh my gosh, there's 40 guys in this lease. Yeah, well, 8 of them are going to be there, fairly regularly. The rest will hunt opening weekend or not at all, or they're too busy, or so even if it's a big property and you got to go in with a bunch of guys that you don't even know, it's better than, I think at least it's something you can have some control over. On public land, you really have no control over where people go. You could say the same thing for a lease, because there are trespassers. That's been an issue in the past with leases I've had. But it's fewer than if you go on public land and see people just setting up stands or heading into where you were planning on going, especially these days with that being such a popular thing, this mobile hunting and cyber scouting and all that Jason was talking about. Pause it there for a second. Another way, a third way is, and this is how I got one of my best hog properties ever when I was doing hog hunts, is I just put an ad in a local paper, a couple of local papers, for not a lot of money, like $25 or something, and just said, looking for a place to hunt hogs. I'm a ethical bow hunter. Won't leave a mess. You just put yourself out there. Like if you were the landowner, would you want slob hunters on there coming out with AKs and shooting pigs at night around your cattle? No. I mean, and that's an actual example from one of the landowners that I leased from. So I leased from him. Actually, would have turned out to be like a day hunt situation, and then he had a friend. This is like a year later. He had a friend that had a property available that he had cattle on, and there was a lot of hogs. So he said, let me get in touch with him. Maybe you can lease the property from him, and that's actually what happened. And we had that property for 10 years at a very good price. So you can put an ad in the paper. You can put things on Facebook Marketplace. You might get some negative feedback from that, but whatever, that's their problem. Maybe if they're not a hunter or whatever, it's none of their business really. And so you might get a little bit of negative, comments or whatever, but who cares? Just brush them off and stick with it, and you might find something. I actually haven't done that where we just moved to. We moved there in February, so I should really get on that and put that out there in the marketplace and Craigslist, etc. And you never know, might get some access to a property that has a garden and the deer are just decimating it, and they know I'm a bow hunter, so they're not gonna, you probably won't even know I'm there half the time. Just park and then don't leave a dead deer on the property and take low risk shots, close shots ones you can make, and get the deer out of there maybe after dark, or just have a small footprint, in other words, on these small private places, and that can go a long way. And then if you kill a couple deer, then probably their friends will say, hey, I've got a deer problem too, maybe he wants to come. Things can go from there in your favor. So it's just another way to find access. I think knocking on doors, at least where I live, I think that's, maybe, I hate to say that it's a way of the past, but in some places it probably still does work. When I lived in Iowa, we used to do that for pheasant hunting. We would literally just drive roads and see a farmhouse and knock on the door, and I had a friend that was really good at it, personable guy, and he would get permission probably half the time to pheasant hunt, because we're just going to be in and out. We're going to push the hedgerows and hunt whatever they own, and then be on our way. It's not like we're going to set up tree stands or anything. We're just in and out. So that worked out really well. We got a bunch of pheasants that way, and access that way. And then sometimes would could lead to deer hunting in the fall. But you just got to kind of think outside the box. So I'm not coming up with anything, radically new. It just things that, since there's been such a movement to public land hunting, and the pressure has increased so much for cyber scouting and people being off from COVID some people for a couple of years, and having a lot of free time on their hands. There's been a big influx of hunters on public lands. So I think over time that'll go away. But there's other ways, and and I'm on my way to one of them right now. So stay tuned.